So I had a Wednesday night, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. So what I often will do when I am not sure what to do, I will start reading the Psalms, and then one of the Psalms will just stand out to me and say, oh, that's the one I want to study. So I'll spend my time looking at a Psalm, and this one just kind of stuck with me. I'm very encouraged by it, and have never taught it before, so it gave me a little bit more, I had to do a little bit more work, but a good thing because I was encouraged by it and got to think through it. I've quoted it and thought on it and want to know the context a little better, so I went ahead and dove in. Let's look at the Psalm. It's a Psalm of David, as it says at the beginning. Y'all know that there's little titles, not the title. You might have a Psalm of a fearless trust in God. That's not inerrant. That's something that was given by the translators, right? That would, the NASB or New American Standard, you might have something different. But that little thing, a Psalm of David, that little phrase, a Psalm of David, that is probably in the originals manuscript. So we know this one directly is a Psalm of David. A psalm being like a song, right? A hymn, somewhat like a hymn, like our hymns today. This was their hymns then, and David was a musician, as we know, right? Who did he play for? Does anybody remember? He played for Saul, that's right. He played for Saul. So he was a musician, and he knew how to write lyrics, too, as you can see. Did really well with them. This would be the songs that they would sing. And this would be a song, I call it the hymn of survival in the midst of difficulties. A hymn of survival in the midst of difficulties. Have you ever had one of those hymns, one of those songs that you sing and you're just struggling and you start singing and it's like, wow, this ministers to my soul. Well, this would be one that would minister to your soul if you were in a difficult circumstance. In a circumstance where you felt like the whole world was against you. In a circumstance where you might have thought, man, it seems like everywhere I go, I'm hitting enemy after enemy or opposition after opposition or difficulty after difficulty. What do I need? Well, this is the hymn that you should sing to your soul. You should repeat to your soul to help you get through that. Okay? So let's look at it. I want to be encouraged. How about you? We'll read this psalm. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the defense of my life. Whom shall I dread? When evildoers come upon me to devour my flesh, my adversaries and my enemies, they stumbled and fell. Though a host encamp against me, my heart will not fear. Though war arises against me, in spite of this, I shall be confident. One thing I have asked from the Lord, that I shall seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to meditate in his temple. For in the day of trouble, he will conceal me in his tabernacle. In the secret place of his tent, he will hide me. He will lift me up on a rock. And now my head will be lifted up above my enemies around me, and I will offer in his tent sacrifices with shouts of joy. And I will sing, yes, I will sing praises to the Lord. Hear, O Lord, when I cry with my voice, and be gracious to me and answer me. When you said, seek my face, my heart said to you, your face, O Lord, I shall seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my help. Do not abandon me nor forsake me, O God of my salvation. For my father and my mother have forsaken me, but the Lord will take me up. Teach me your ways, O Lord, and lead me in a level path because of my foes. Do not deliver me over to the desire of my adversaries, for false witnesses have arisen against me, and such as a breath out of violence. I would have despaired unless I had believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Yes, wait for the Lord. Excellent. All right. So this hymn of survival kind of breaks down into three sections that I think are laid out a little bit in your outline there and in the handout I gave to you. The first section appears to be 1 through 6, where it appears the psalmist, David, is rehearsing the Lord's blessings, the favor of God upon him, rehearsing or thinking back or meditating on the facts and the truths of God's favor that's on him. Then in verse 7 through 12, David turns his attention to God in light of what he's rehearsed in his heart. In other words, after thinking on these truths and rehearsing these truths about who God is and what God's done and what he's all about, he then turns to God and says, help. So he begins to petition. In light of who God is, it causes David to do what? Call out to him in prayer. So prayer is a result of rehearsing truths about who God is. As we think about who God is, it causes us to do what? Cry out to him. And that's what happens with David. In verses 7 to 12, he petitions God. He begins to ask God, the God of truth, the God that protects, the God that loves him, as revealed in the first 6 verses. He then turns his attention and says, help me, Lord. Help me with these circumstances, because I'm in a bad spot. And then after that, he appears in verses 13 to 14 to kind of counsel his own heart. It's very interesting because we don't know whether or not God answers yes or no to the prayer. We don't know when this was prayed and what the circumstances were. Many times David went through these kind of difficulties, didn't he? I mean, we all know some of the situations. What are some of the bad times when Saul had in his life? Or not Saul, but David. I'll give you a hint. David had a bad situation in his life where somebody was hunting him. What are some examples? Anybody know? Saul. At the beginning, he was hunted by Saul, right? What's another one? His son, Absalom. For a while, he was running from Absalom, right? Not to mention, throughout his whole time, the Philistines wanted him dead, right? Except one time when he partnered with him, and then he played crazy, right, to get out. Remember all these things? So the whole point to this, though, is David's life was one of conflict. And he always was facing adversaries, right? So we don't really know, when did he do this hymn of deliverance or this hymn of survival? When did he make it? Well, we don't know, but I do know this. Once he learned it, it appears that he probably said it over and over and over, right? To rehearse in his heart as he goes through the difficulties how to do it and how to deal with it. By the end, in verse 13 and 14, it appears to me that he is counseling in his own heart here. He's telling himself what he should do in light of the petitions that he's asked God. Now he says, think about these truths. Wait for the Lord. Wait on him. Wait on God. So here is who God is, causing him to pray. Then telling himself, wait, Mike. Hang in there, David. You can do it, April. Wait on the Lord. He will take care of you. Do you understand? That's kind of the way I think the psalm lays down as a whole. So what I want to do is kind of walk down through these. I'm very encouraged by the first 6 because it's all about rehearsing the blessings of the Lord. The first 6 verses, notice David rehearses the Lord's blessings. There's 6 blessings that he rehearses, that he thinks through or he meditates on, and he recalls to his account or his thoughts process. These 6 blessings, the first one is in verse 1. And again, it helps to set the context. David rehearses his guaranteed deliverance in verse 1. Notice, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the defense of my life. Whom shall I dread? Now you see the Hebrew parallelism there, right? You have 2 similar questions with a statement of truth with a question. The question is implying what? An answer. It implies an answer. What's the implied answer? Whom shall I fear? No one. Right, that's the implied answer. There's no one to fear. And whom shall I dread? No one. The answer is both times, I have no one to dread. Now, he's in a bad situation, most likely. He has the opposition. when we're counseling our own heart or we're reflecting and rehearsing on God's favor in the midst of this, we must say what? God is bigger, God is stronger, God is mightier than any opposition that we may face. I was talking to my wife about this beforehand. In some ways, we believers have some difficulties that are harder than David and some difficulties that are easier than David. The things that are a little bit harder for us is this. I have a tendency to have a problem seeing the adversary. You understand what I mean by that? I mean, David knew who was chasing and trying to kill him. It comes from all different directions, and often even people that we consider friends and loved ones, because the enemy is working behind the scenes. They can actually end up being the ones that hurt us. Maybe not even intentionally, but they can be used to be hurt. We must understand that the battle is still real. Even though it's not right out there in the front and we don't have Goliath out there mocking us, the enemy is still behind the scenes doing the same very things, right? So when we come to a psalm like this and we need to understand, well, do I even need to pray this? Does it even really matter? The answer is yes. Because the adversary, the devil, is still roaming around whom he can devour, seeking whom he can devour, and he can still come after us. We need to understand these truths are just as much important for us today to what? Rehearse, think on, meditate on, right? And so what do? How does he know that no one he has no one to fear? Well, look at the first verse. It says, the Lord is my light and my salvation. The light and my salvation. The light here probably points to the context of hope, of redemption, that deliverance, that hope that we have. Light, light as opposed to darkness of condemnation. We have light of redemption, light of being delivered. And it's matched up with salvation. And again, salvation here is not talking about, for David, it was not talking about his salvation with respect to being declared right with God, justification, sanctification, glorification. At this point, he's probably talking about deliverance from an Absalom or a Saul. Do you understand? That kind of salvation. However, by application, it still fits, doesn't it? How are we delivered? How are we sanctified? How is this true? By God. He is our salvation. He is our deliverance. How do we survive in this world when the world seems to be coming at us from every direction? Answer, He is my salvation. He is my deliverance. He is my light. Whom do we have to fear? No one. We have no one to fear. Mike, that seems like you have confidence. I do. Just like David has confidence. Aren't you blown away? I don't know about you, but guys, but I absolutely love the scene of David and Goliath, where everybody else is cowering in fear. And David walks up and says, "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine? I will take him. No problem." Why? Because it's God. He knows that he's fighting against the living God. His confidence is in God. He is his light and his salvation. I can take him. By the grace of God, by the power of God, by the strength of God, my confidence is in God. That's what he's saying. We can have confidence too. We can have confidence that no matter how bad it gets, we don't have anything to fear because God is our light and our salvation. These are things that we should be rehearsing in our heads, right? He's our defense. Here, this word defense is probably more of a stronghold or a refuge, a place that you can hide, a hiding place. And the idea is that, and you'll see this throughout, and this is very interesting, this is a main theme throughout the psalm, is that hiding place or stronghold or defense or refuge is the tent, the tabernacle, the presence of God. All of these things kind of run all the way down through it. And this theme is going to be common. So where is his confidence? His confidence is in a location. It's in a location. But the location is where? The presence of the Lord. It's the presence of the Lord. His confidence is in the Lord. It's in him. It's in his presence, in his defense, in his refuge, He is our refuge, isn't he? He's the hiding place. He's the one that we go to when we're struggling. I love this, don't you? So encouraging. Because often what we do is we see the things going down around us, we see the difficulties happening, and we take it personal, and we think, oh, this person is just out to get me. They're bigger, they're stronger, it's going to hurt, this is going to be bad, and what should we do? No, I have a refuge. I have a light. I have a salvation. I don't have anything to fear. No matter what they do, even if they take us out, as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would say, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to be with God. He's my salvation. He's my light, right? We have nothing to fear. Nothing. No one. That's what David says. Don't fear. Rehearse in your head. Your light, your salvation, your refuge. Notice, second, David rehearses his enemy's previous destruction. Look at verse 2. Now, this is so similar to what we've talked about recently about how the tables will be turned and there'll be a stumbling and a fall. Well, here the enemies fall based on themselves. Look, when evildoers came upon me to devour my flesh, my adversaries and my enemies, those are the ones that are the evildoers that came upon him to devour his flesh, right? What happened to them? They stumbled and fell. They stumbled and fell. That is, they weren't successful. Now, does it tell why they stumbled and fell? Does it tell who caused their stumbling and falling? Not in verse 2. But the context implies what? God did it. God did it. God was sovereign over them. This is a very important lesson for us to understand. Oh, I cannot stress this enough. God often allows us in his providence to come into interaction with enemies, adversaries, difficulties, trials, difficulties in our life. But he does it. But he also provides a way for us to get through it. He provides a way that we don't have to worry, and he takes care of it. And often the enemy then falls on their own sword, or they make their own mistake. They turn the wrong way, and then God is shown to be the deliverer. So who should we fear? No one. Listen, beloved, the world is probably going to fall down around us. So I just recently, I was talking to somebody, and I was saying, I fear for my children. How hard it's going to be for my children to be raised in this world. How hard is it going to be? Answer, who should I fear? Who should they fear? No one, if they will trust in the Lord. I don't care how bad it gets. God has not changed. Even if the world completely implodes, if my children will fear the Lord, then guess what? They have nothing to fear. They have nothing to fear. We have nothing to fear. Now, does that mean we stick our head in the sand and we're not watching? No, sure, we should watch, but we don't have anything to fear ultimately, do we? Because he's the creator, he's God, he's sovereign, he's our light, he's our salvation, he's our refuge, and he's the one that makes the enemies fall and stumble. Rehearse that. Mike, remember that. Remember that, Mike. That's what I have to tell myself. Third, David rehearses his confidence in war. Notice, though a host encamp against me. Now, a host is what? This is a whole army. This is a whole army. And how many people are there? Though a host, an army, encamp against me. That's one. There's an army against him. Boy, did that ever happen? Yeah, it did. Yeah, there were multiple times where David was running for his life all by himself. Very few wanted to stick with him. And though a whole army come against me, what's the idea? My heart will not fear. Why not? David, why not? Because even a multitude of armies is nothing in the hands of a living God. He's able to deliver us even in the midst of an impossible army coming against you. I love his confidence. How about you? I want this kind of confidence in God. And though war arise against me, in spite of this, I shall be confident. And he just flat out says it. In other words, I know these things have happened, and in the midst of those things, I still have confidence in God. I know he's in control. I know he's powerful. I know he's mighty. I know he's a refuge. I know he's my stronghold. So you see, it goes from enemies within, smaller individuals, to armies against him. It's still no match to God. No match. Fourth, David rehearses his one pursuit in times of conflict. He goes over, what is my one pursuit? What's the one thing I'm going to seek when things go bad? Okay, now I don't know about you, but what are the things that we say? Stop for a second and think about this. Things go bad, you have somebody against you, or something bad's happening in your life. What are the things that we usually pursue first? Solutions. Wise counsel, because doesn't it say to go get wise counsel? Doesn't the Bible say wise counsel? It says, or what? We look for ways out, ways to flee, ways to run, right? Or if we're really strong, we say, where's my gun? I can take him. Right? Yeah, I can take him. Right? Now, these are usually the first thoughts that come to our mind. If big bad government's going to go knock on my door, what are they going to do? They're going to get a 12-gauge surprise. That's what we think. But what does the world, or what does the Word say that we should do? Yes. Seek the presence of the Lord. Go to him. Go to him. This is it. And again, he does talk about dwelling in the house of the Lord. Just for the sake of the argument, though, you understand the house of the Lord hadn't been built. David didn't build the house of the Lord. Correct? Who built the house of the Lord? Solomon did. So was it a tent? Well, we know that the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant rather, was traveling around. It wasn't in any tent, was it? So we must be talking, even at this point, it appears to be that he's talking about what? He's talking about symbolically of the presence of the Lord, just going to the presence of the Lord. That must be the main point of what he's getting at. So what's he say? What's the one thing I've asked of the Lord? And that I shall seek. There's one thing I need, just one thing, and that's to be with you. That's to be with you. I just want to be with you. Notice that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to meditate in his temple. Okay, so maybe he's looking forward and saying, man, that day when we're going to build a temple and I'm going to be able to go, but then he's not allowed to go in. Right? Only the high priest could go in once. So it still appears to be that he's thinking of what? The presence of the Lord. And he knows God's omnipresent. He knows God's everywhere. So for him to say the one thing he needs is what? To be with God. I just need to be with him. I need my mind, my heart, my meditations, my thoughts to be on your glory, who you are, what you're doing. It's all about you, Yahweh God. That's what we should do. This isn't the first place we go, though, is it? This isn't always the first place I go. But this is where I have to go. And so David rehearses it in his heart. Stop, go to the presence of the Lord. This is where I'm going to go. This is the one thing I need, is to be with you. I need to be with you. Isn't this great? Are you encouraged yet? I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged. So David develops this idea of being in the presence of the Lord. Notice in the fifth one in verse 5, David rehearses why God's presence is his one pursuit. He tells why the presence of the Lord is his one pursuit. Look at it, verse 5. Because, in the day of trouble, he will conceal me in his tabernacle. In the secret place of his tent, he will hide me. He will lift me up on a rock. Now, this is very interesting. Again, where is this tabernacle? Where is this tent? Is he hiding in the tent? Is he hiding in the tabernacle? Or is he hiding in the presence of the Lord? And it's interesting because it says in a secret place of his tent, implying what? His tent's come sign of like nobody knows where his tent is. Interesting, isn't it? But is God's tent in hiding? Well, no, but yes. God can hide you anywhere, wherever he is. God can protect you wherever you are. In his presence, if I'm with him and I'm walking with him, he can protect me anywhere I am. Nothing comes against me no matter where I am. He is my hiding place. He is my stronghold no matter where I am. He can hide you right in front of your enemy. I love this because you know what immediately pops in my mind? Do you remember when Saul was chasing him? He was right there by him. He cut a piece of his cloth when he went to use the bathroom. Do you remember? It's as if he was hiding in plain sight. Why? Because he was in the presence of the Lord. The Lord can take care of him anywhere he's at. He is our hiding place. We have nothing to fear. He's our light. He's our deliverance. He's our refuge. It's the presence of the Lord that we should always seek. I need to seek him more. I need to trust him more. Oh, God, remind me of these truths when I get afraid, when I'm fearful of how the things are going in this world. Remind me that you are bigger than this world, that the world is a gnat in your hand. It's a grain of sand in your hand. The whole world is nothing to God. He can squash it in a second. It's nothing. But there's a hiding place, and he will lift me up on a rock, implying that you're going to be victorious no matter what in him, in his presence. Finally, the last blessing David rehearses is in verse 6. David rehearses his worship in victory. In other words, God's taking care of me. In his presence, he will take care of me, and then I will worship. Worship is a guarantee. David rehearses this. He says, and now my head will be lifted up above my enemies around me. He's going to put me above them, and they're going to be down there. Do you understand? And it's very interesting. It's not that his head will be coming off, but it's the idea that he will be elevated to a position of victory, and the enemies will be put down, which is exactly what happened with Goliath, wasn't it? Again, when we look at Goliath, we think, oh, towering Goliath looking over small little David. In the end, David held his head up, cut it off, and he was the victor. He stood over Goliath. Why? Because of God. Not because of David, but because of God. Notice now my head will be lifted up above my enemies around me, and I will offer his sacrifices with shouts, in his tent sacrifices with shouts of joy. I will sing, yes, I will sing praises to the Lord. In other words, I'm going to worship. I'm going to worship. And I'm going to worship sincerely to God because he's the one that gives victory. By the way, isn't this the way it is? When victories come, who gets the credit? God does. And what does it produce in us? Worship. Huh? Yeah, more victory, yes, and more worship, right? It just compounds over and over because when we're in the presence of the Lord and we are rehearsing the truths of who he is and what he's done for us, we're okay. We're okay. And we worship him, and there's victory even in the midst of difficulties and trials. Now, At this point, you're thinking, well, it seems as though he's just confident that victory's coming. He knows God's going to do it. What more do we need to do? How about just sit down and watch it happen? He just rehearsed it. He just said, it's going to happen. This victory is sure. God is victor, right? That's what he said. What's he do? He prays. He prays. So this is God. God is the Savior. God is the one that provides victory. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't pray. He actually petitions God. As he's rehearsed through who God is and what God will do, and he knows it and understands it, now it's time for me to seek the Lord. And so he turns his attention, and David begins to petition the Lord directly in verse 7. Notice it says, "Hear, O Yahweh, when I cry with my voice, and be gracious to me and answer me." So in other words, he's got the rehearsing down, but now he just literally goes to God. He does what? What he's already rehearsed. I will seek you. I will seek to be in your presence. And so what does he do? He seeks him. Isn't that cool? "Hear, O Israel, when I cry with my voice, and be gracious to me and answer me." He's talking directly to the Lord at this point. Obviously, God hears everything, but David speaks with confidence to the Lord. Remember, God has been faithful, so David knows to call out to God. And again, this a stress for us, something that we need to think on. We can know truth, but that doesn't mean that we don't have a relationship with God and cry out to him and ask him for help. He wants us also to depend upon him and seek him. That's why prayer is such an important part of our walk with the Lord, isn't it? It's not just an occasional thing. It's something I need him all the time. And so if we know he's faithful, then that means that should drive us to what? Pursue him. And that's what he does. He pursues them. So the first round of petitions is verses 7 and 8. There's this first round. Notice here, "O Lord, when I cry with my voice, and be gracious to me." Then he gives the reason for his petition. Look at one of the reasons for his petition, his first round. Verse 8, what's the reason? "When you said, 'Seek my face,' my heart said to you, 'Your face, O Lord, I shall seek.'" So what's the implication? Why does he pray, "Hear my cry, Lord. Hear me. Please be gracious to me"? Why does he pray that way? Well, because God told him, "Seek me." God told him, "Seek me. You told me to seek you. So here I am. I'm seeking you." Okay? So one of it is obedience. One of the reasons for his petitions is obedience. God told him to, so he did it. "When you said, 'Seek my face,' my heart said, 'I will seek you.'" That means God's worked in his heart already, by the way, right? Because people don't seek him unless God's already began to draw him. He understands this. He gets this. And so he seeks him. Notice, seek his face, by the way. I don't know about you. His face is not always something that you want to seek. Unless you're his child. Very important. If you look at face throughout the Old Testament, his face is often something that should bring fear and cause people to cower. But here, the believer, he says, "Seek my face." And what does he do? He seeks his face. And by the way, if he seeks his face, "Your face, O Lord, I shall seek," it does imply that he is going to have God's judgment on those that are coming against him. I think this is somewhat of a call for vengeance on those that are opposing him. God told you, "I will protect you. I will be your refuge. I will be your stronghold. I will defend you. I will take care of you. Seek my face." What's he do? "I'm seeking your face. Be gracious to me. Take care of me." And he does. Second round of David's petition starts in 9. "Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You have been my help. Do not abandon me, nor forsake me, O God of my salvation." So here he's saying, please don't turn away. I need you. I need you. This is bad. I'm in a bad spot. There's a lot of bad people. This is maybe an army coming against me. I'm in trouble. Please don't turn away from me. I need you. Now, he's already rehearsed that God does that. But what's he crying out for? Help me! Right? Now, sometimes we see that as attention, but that's not attention, is it? Sometimes we see that as attention. Well, if God does this, why do I even need to ask him to do it anymore? Right? Do you understand what I'm getting at here? We think, well, God should just take care of me. He should just take care of me because this is who he is. I rehearsed that. I know it. I know it. But God wants us to do what? Seek him. So often the trials, the difficulties, the hardships are brought into our life to cause us to do what? Seek him. Now this is so important. Oh, Mike, remember this. Please, Mike, remember this. I'm like, please, you're counseling your own heart. Think, remember this. Bad thing happens. Oh yeah, God allowed this to come into my life, so I will seek him. The difficulties in our life are intended to cause us to do what? Pursue God. To pursue God. That's what's happened here. He's in a bad spot. So don't hide your face from me. Don't turn your servant away in anger. You have been my help in the past. Do not abandon me, nor forsake me, O God of my deliverance. And then the reason for that petition is, again, in verse 10. Because my father and my mother have forsaken me, but the Lord will take me up. Wow, now this one is a little bit perplexing to me. Did his real father and mother forsake him? Was David really forsaken by his own father and his own mother? Possibly. Possibly this is a reference to relatives, people that were around him that were relatives, kindred. Either way, he's in a bad spot again, and it's coming from a very unlikely source, isn't it? You don't expect your own father and mother to be your enemy, do you? You don't expect the ones closest to you to be part of the ones that are coming against you. But what's God do? Why is God doing this? He's wanting him to pursue the Lord. To remember in my presence is fullness of joy, blessing, and glory. For my father and my mother have forsaken me, but the Lord will take me up. Third round of David's petitions, verse 9. Teach me your ways, O Lord, and lead me in a level path. In other words, what? I need your direction. I need you to take care of me. I need you to help me to know where to go and what to do and how to deal with this. Lead me in level paths. Why? Again, the reason is given because of my foes. Why do I need to be taught your way? How do I need to know where to go? Because of my foes. Because the enemies are always trying to get me off the path. So he petitions God. Fourth round of petitions, verse 12. Do not deliver me over to the desires of my adversaries. What are the desires of his adversaries? Kill him, destroy him, belittle him, shame him. What did Absalom do? He took David's own wives out. Did this all to shame him, right? This is all about putting David down. Do not deliver me over to the desires of my adversaries. They want me dead. And then the reason David petitions the Lord again is found in the second half. For false witnesses have risen against me, and such as breathe out violence. In other words, I'm in a bad spot, and these people are liars, and they're trying to take me out. Help me. This goes all the way to armies against me, to individuals against me, to family members against me, to people within my own cohort. Where's my deliverance? The Lord. So what do? we seek him. So at this point, I have to admit, it would be wonderful if there was this, I'm just putting words, but if there was this like 2 or 3 verses that said, I'm there for you. I got you. I hear your prayers. I'm going to take care of you. Everything's going to be okay. These people will calm down. I will direct it in a different direction. You will be okay. I love you. Glory's coming. Look at me. You know, I'm wanting the Lord to be down here at the end going, I'm going to be there for you. Right? But we don't need that. You know why? Because he's already rehearsed the truth before. God's already told him that. He's already showed himself to be faithful. So what does he tell himself in light of the fact that he knows the truth? Listen up, Mike. Hear me. Wait for the Lord. Look at it. David counsels himself to wait on the Lord in verses 13 and 14. First counsels, surely, I have believed is how that should be translated. I have believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. In other words, I get it. I believed. I know I'm going to see the Lord's victory. I know it. So he counsels himself. I believe this. I know it's true. I know it's true. He's saying, back directed to himself, I think. And then finally, verse 14, wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Yes, wait for the Lord. Now, I admit that this could be him counseling other people. It could be him counseling other people that are with, and he could be saying, hey, guys, we know it. We've rehearsed it. I've pled for the Lord. Now let's wait. You wait for the Lord, okay? Or it could be talking third person of himself, and he's saying, wait for the Lord. Do you understand? Which one is it? I'm not going to die on it. But the reality is that often when I'm preaching to you, guess who I'm preaching to first? Myself. Wait on the Lord, Mike. Wait on the Lord, Mike. Wait on the Lord, Carol. Wait on the Lord, Eric. He'll take care of you. Wait on the Lord. He's good. He will take care of it. We've believed, haven't we? We know he's faithful, isn't he? He always takes care of us. We're going to see his glory one day, aren't we? Are you encouraged? What a passage, right? So encouraged by this. I hope you were. You ever get discouraged and struggle? Here's what I strongly advise you. Just take one of these Psalms, start digging in. Break it down, look in your MacArthur Study Bible. He gave me the outline. I'll just be perfectly honest. Look at it. His outline's right there. You see it? His outline's right there. And I stole a little bit of it, and I kind of changed a few of the words, but it's okay. It's the way it looks. Oh, Dr. Zimmick gave it to MacArthur. So, okay. But it's the right outline for the passage. So why not go with what it says and just, hey, it helped me. I saw it, and then it began to unfold real clearly. Do you understand? And it's so encouraging. Aren't you encouraged? We have a God that is our light and our salvation and our refuge. Yes, ma'am.